The case for Asia, I think, is a particularly powerful case to make for Australian investors. And I think what Australian investors really need to do is to look at their portfolios and try and think about how much exposure they have in those portfolios to countries and economies like China and India in particular, which are the two giants in the emerging world. If I think about what's happened in China and India over the last 40 years, it's been really quite dramatic. 50 years ago, GDP per capita in India and China was about $100 a head. In China, it's now $10,000 a head. And if you live in a tier one city like Shanghai, it's over $20,000 a head. India has lagged, but still you've moved from about $100 a head to about $3,000 a head in terms of GDP per capita. So that's times 1.4 billion people in each country. These are extraordinary statistics. Life expectancy in China in the early 1960s was about 36 years. 36. So I would already be well underground, pushing up the roses for several decades now already if I'd been unfortunate to have been born in China at that time. Life expectancy in China is now up to 76 years. India, the improvement is huge, but less spectacular than China. We've gone from about sort of 40 years life expectancy to just under 70. But again, think about this as times 1.4 billion people. These are enormous changes, and it reflects the rise of the middle classes in Asia. There was one study that was done a few years ago that estimated that in 2009 there was something like 500 million people in Asia leading a middle-class lifestyle. Now, middle class for this survey was defined as having between $10 and $100 per day of disposable income. This survey estimates that number of people in Asia leading a middle-class lifestyle will reach 3.2 billion by 2030. These are extraordinary numbers. And of course, when I fly into Australia, I flew into Sydney on Monday night, I was just surrounded by visitors from other Asian countries. All the flights coming in and out of Sydney Airport, it seems, are going to one of these mega cities in Asia. I think Australians live it and see it and breathe it every single day. You just see huge numbers of tourists coming to your wonderful country. So this rise of the Asian middle classes, I think, is just one of the great themes of the global economy today. I think it's wonderful news, the fact that so many billions of people are now beginning to lead the sort of lifestyle that Australians in the lucky country have been leading for so many years. This freedom and the ability to travel, to go out and see the world, and to dream and begin to live a middle-class lifestyle. One way to play that trend is to invest in the shares of Western companies who cater to those needs. So a classic example would be something like a Unilever that has a subsidiary in India, Hindustan Unilever, and a big subsidiary in Indonesia, for example. But increasingly, I think it's important to play this rise of the Chinese, the Indian, the ASEAN middle classes by investing in local companies, in companies in India, in companies in China, in companies in Indonesia. So I think it's time for Australian investors to start thinking about dedicated allocations to companies based in the emerging markets and indeed in Asia. I'm sure it's too much or too difficult for most investors here to pick a country. I mean, when do you pick China versus India? I don't think people here probably have the skill set necessary to make those decisions. But I think it is probably worth paying a fee to an asset management company to make those sorts of decisions for you and to try and pick some of the best companies.